Limbus Company is a team-building game. In team-building games, units that are part of said team often perform different roles, and Limbus is no exception. Damage dealer is the most prevalent role, with many units outputting heavy physical damage when their gimmick is played right. But there are also status inflictors, who increase the stack of an effect on an enemy, in order to set up extra damage from the status side. There are also supports, who increase the damage dealt by their allies, or taken by the enemies, via effects like Fragile or Damage Up. Identities in Limbus can often take up two roles at once, providing value in a multifaceted way. Also, as the game's power creep sets in, some units can change their main role. Look at R-Corp Heathcliff, for example. On release, he was one of the strongest damage dealers Limbus Company had to offer, but once his damage stopped being significant, the fragile infliction he has access to remained valuable, so the unit got pushed into the support role. This way of allowing units to get value from different things sets their kits apart from each other, and makes team building much more fun. With enough damage on the team, a support's damage buffs can add up to be more valuable than another damage unit. Status inflictors enable incredibly fast clears of bosses, and damage dealers themselves are the backbone of every team built for long encounters. But there is one role that Project Moon have tried to fill, but never ended up making good. The tank role. And that is the topic of today's video. Before we get into it, however, I have to put up a disclaimer. If you enjoy using identities that you consider tanks, I am not telling you to change your ways and drop them. It's your game, it's your account, and you can do whatever you want with it. My goal today is to discuss Limbus Company's combat systems through the lens of a tank, and to improve Limbus meta discussions going forward with this video. Not to create a trend of hating on certain units or anything like that. And also, if you find yourself coming back to my videos, or end up enjoying this one, consider subscribing. It takes just 1 second and helps me out a lot. Now let's talk about tanks. Let's start with the obvious question. What is a tank? An identity that people would commonly consider a tank is someone with defensive value present in their kit by design. Defensive value can come in many forms: high HP, defensive effects such as defense level up and protection, access to aggro, self-sustain mechanics and built-in damage resistance, as well as assist defenses and forced targeting. A unit doesn't have to have all of these things in their kit to be considered a tank, but a combination of a couple of these mechanics is usually enough, with the most important points being HP and aggro. So why would you need this defensive value? Let's look at the threats presented by the enemies for that. Mainly, you've got 3 things they can do: direct damage, unbreakable coins, and status damage. Direct damage from taking an entire skill can be easily fully mitigated by winning a clash against it. If you don't, this kind of damage is usually the most devastating, with certain skills being able to one-shot sinners if not clashed with. That being said, it's not particularly difficult to win clashes. With their power conditionals up, most modern identities get easy clash wins against most modern bosses, and many enemy nukes can be outclashed by ego skills. Unbreakable coins are the second threat, and in my opinion, the most overrated one. Unbreakable coins are a form of mostly undodgeable damage, with some identity-specific exceptions, and it's designed to slowly chip away at your sinners even if you win the clash. While the damage is pretty much guaranteed to hit you, it still isn't that big of a cause for alarm. First of all, every identity in the game has a fatal, normal and inefficient resistance. Unbreakable coins can do a decent amount of damage when hitting into fatals, but lining up the units that clash with the enemy while keeping the resistances in mind can greatly reduce the physical threat of unbreakable coins. The same goes for sin resistances, of course. Additionally, a lot of modern unbreakable coins have clauses where if you win the clash, the red coin attack cannot stagger you, which also greatly reduces the threat of this mechanic. See, taking damage in Limbus Company does not really matter on its own. A unit at 100% HP and at 10% HP outputs the same amount of value, and taking damage is only threatening when your sinners get staggered or die. For an ally to die, they need to take a lot of damage, and with the Unbreakables not being able to stagger, it means that the damage you receive from those is not that big of a deal. The last and the realest threat the enemies have is status damage. This refers to effects such as bleed, rupture, burn, damaging tremor types, and stuff like that. These effects punch through physical resistances, and often sin resistances as well, in order to deliver unblockable damage. This damage can stagger sinners, unless specified otherwise, and that makes it scary. Still, the status effects don't just appear out of thin air, they need to be inflicted. And usually this is done by enemy skills. For normal coins, it's the same story as with direct damage. Win the clash and the threat is gone. But the combination of unbreakable coins and status infliction is where it gets dicey. This makes status damage unavoidable, and it will chip away at your health until your sinners get staggered, which is very bad. So this is it for the threats. Literally nothing matters except unbreakable coins with access to unavoidable damage. There are a couple other types of skills that might be scary, but we'll get into those later. So how do you deal with these threats, and does it require a tank? Well, as I said, being careful about which sinner clashes with which skill greatly reduces the threat of red coin damage, and for status stuff you also have answers. Now, first of all, not all bosses even have access to status damage, and even less can actually create meaningful stacks that do more than like 2 damage per turn. As for the ones that have some real effect infliction, like Im-Gyong-op, for example, your best bet is just spreading out the clashes and not letting her hit more than one skill on a given ally. By doing that, you ensure your sinner's ability to deplete the bleed stack before its potency gets increased by another red coin, and that significantly reduces the damage that you are forced to take. In a way, stacking statuses is actually an anti-tank mechanic, as having one unit with aggro eat all of the hits on their own leaves them with a massive stack of bleed, which leads to death or forced defense spam unless they have a way to cleanse debuffs, which is something not a lot of identities are capable of, with only really one relevant unit doing it. Additionally, as I said, the threat of status damage increases over time, and isn't a large issue until the stack reaches a decent size. And this is a microcosm of a different fact of Limbus Company combat that makes tanking less favorable. Limbus Company is fundamentally a damage race. That's right, this is where we also come back to those other threatening skills that I mentioned earlier. I showed you the 3 threats, as presented by normal skills. However, the stuff that actually kills your team is usually the nuke. Many bosses have these nuke skills, capable of wiping out teams and chunking identities hard, even when you win a clash against them. And I imagine that when people complain about unbreakable coins, they mean those coins specifically on nuke skills. As yes, those are designed to hit hard no matter what you do. So is this it? Is this where tanking becomes valuable? No, not quite. See, these nukes require some kind of setup from the bosses that use them, as if they spam them turn 1, you wouldn't really have much counterplay. This opens up the path to beat said bosses without interacting with the nukes at all. Lei Heng's Tiger Slayer is scary, I agree, but a sufficiently offensively powerful team can kill him before he even uses Tangle Cleaver, let alone Tiger Slayer. And I'm sure that you've seen many teams perform these feats, and it's not like it's just a rupture or sinking thing or whatever. Similarly, you can just ignore both Furioso variants of Rien by powering through his health bar with a team focused on outputting maximum damage. And by that, I don't mean a team of just damage dealers. To perform these feats, you need beautifully woven combinations of damage dealers, status inflictors, and supports, all working together to take down an enemy as quickly as possible. That is to say that it's not cheese or some kind of underhanded tactic. Team building does not break down when you play for damage optimization, it's just the defensive value that falls off. But here's the kicker. What if you are faced with the nuke skill, despite your greatest efforts to end the fight before it comes? Well, the tank won't save you here either. The great power of these nukes often comes from their ability to deal massive damage across your whole team, eradicating your fragile units even if there are tankier identities on the field. Unlike enemies, the Sinners don't have access to increased slot weight, so if an AoE nuke wants to hit your whole team, it's gonna hit your whole team. Of course, ultimate skills are not all the same, and a boss like Butterfly of Entangled Lives, in its present form for example, has a single target skill as its strongest attack, and that can be redirected towards a tank to save a squishier ally. But what this shows is that damage racing isn't just the best way to deal with skills like this overall, but it's sometimes basically your only way to do so. All of this is pretty sad for tanks, but we haven't even talked about the main mechanic they interact with. Aggro. Aggro is an effect that makes the slot of the affected ally more likely to be targeted by enemies. That's right, more likely. The effect is luck-based. The way aggro works is that every sinner has a targeting weight, and each point of aggro makes this number scale up linearly, making it more likely that this specific sinner gets targeted. More aggro means a higher chance to be targeted, but it's still not a consistent effect. The luck-based nature of aggro means that you don't get to force out certain behavior patterns on the side of the enemy, and you can still find yourself in a position where bad targeting ruins the turn that you have planned. But it's still an improvement over no aggro, I guess. So to put it to the test, let's go fight Rien with a bleed team, since he's weak to bleed. Oh, would you look at that? Yeah, another issue with aggro is that it just doesn't work on enemies and skills with unique targeting. This throws an extra wrench into this effect's performance, and the amount of inconsistencies it has is really annoying, as it's the main tool tanking units have to get the enemy's attention. So, to summarize, enemies don't present a lot of meaningful threats until later turns in a fight, and you can simply not interact with those turns by building for damage. Big enemy nuke skills don't get covered by tank identities, and aggro is a luck-based effect that certain enemies are entirely immune to. To top all of this off, there is no intrinsic value to tanking. Doing damage is valuable because the fight ends with a victory when the enemy's health is depleted. It's kind of the point of the game. Status infliction is converted into damage as well, and provides extra value on top of physical damage when built around. Supporting effects increase outgoing damage, bringing about the end of the encounter faster. But tanking? Well, you get nothing for just eating hits to the face, and since others do just fine after being hit, it's not even a way to prolong your ability to do damage, like it is when you build counter items in Deadlock for example. So yeah, an identity's ability to tank cannot define its kit, since tanking has no intrinsic value due to how combat is designed in Limbus Company. The role of tank is simply not something the game has to offer. Predwan moderators, I'm talking to you right now. Please get this tank category off of my screen, bro. It's just taking up space. Fucking half of it is empty anyways, just take it down. But before we end this video, I do want to address a thought that I don't want you to form in your head after watching it. An identity being tanky doesn't instantly mean that it's bad. In fact, it's a good thing. Because of course it is. Why wouldn't the ability to take damage with less consequences be good? But as I said, it cannot define a unit's kit. Good identities are still those who provide high amounts of tangible value to your team, and whether they are tanky or not is secondary, but it's still better to be tanky than not to be. Also, while the role of tank itself is fake, tanking can be used as a vehicle to allow units to perform well in other roles. As examples, I have T-Corp Dawn, Rain Faust and Ujet Otis. All three of these units have access to above average HP and some kind of additional defensive value. However, what makes them shine is the ability to actually provide value when hit. All of these units inflict their respective status effects when hit under certain conditions, which makes them excellent status inflictors who utilize tanking as a means to an end. This type of mechanic is honestly really fun, and I hope Project Moon make more units like this, as it allows the concept of taking damage to provide value to actually pop off, making these units stand out compared to the rest. And while we're on the topic of tank adjacent stuff, let me also quickly touch up on assist defense, forced clashing, and healing, so that this video doesn't feel incomplete. Assist defense is an awesome effect, but its value doesn't lie in the defense part. The ability to accurately redirect an enemy attack into an assist defense works better and more consistently than aggro, and the mechanic actually has value by design. The skill that procs from the mechanic is that value, and in some cases, that skill is a whole ass nuke. Additionally, even if the skill is on the weaker side, it's still an extra action conjured out of nothing, so it's a free ego resource that you wouldn't have had otherwise. Units with assist defense aren't necessarily designed to be tanks, but they usually have high health, since the mechanic will make them take more chip damage due to interacting with more than one skill per turn. Forced clashing is another mechanic that can be looked at as defensive value, and to be honest, this one's a bit overrated, as there's already a lot of speed control in the game, and you don't usually find yourself in positions where you can't redirect a crucial skill. But it is a nice addition to the team, as it always remains a consistent way to gain control over the field, no matter the enemy, unlike the luck-based aggro bullshit. And finally, healing. The nail in the coffin. Sometimes you're up against enemies that really pile on that chip damage, and sometimes you don't feel like resetting for a perfect turn 1 to kill the boss instantly. In those cases, you don't need your units to be tankier to win the fight. Instead, healing is the far better option. The main reason being that healing is usually tied to ego skills, not identities, meaning that the opportunity cost is not an entire slot losing offensive power to improve defenses, but instead it's only the replacement of one skill, and some healing skills have extra offensive value tacked onto them, so it's not even an issue. Back when I first thought about making this video, I was going to dog on healing as well, but that was almost a year ago, and since then the healing egos have been improving in the value department, while longer fights with enemies that have more and more unblockable damage started showing up, so I have since reconsidered. And speaking of when I thought of this video, it unironically happened during the Arknights collab. When I released my video about the egos, I saw an alarming amount of people vouching for Unbrilliant Glory as a tool for fucking Priest Gregor of all units to become tankier. Why? Like dude, tanking has no intrinsic value, what is the point of not only dedicating a slot to an underpowered bleed unit, but also making him use an ego instead of working towards the one good skill he has? Are you guys crazy? What are you even talking about? Have you even played the game at all? If you disagree or have something to add, feel free to leave a comment below, and I might read it and respond. If you like this video at any point, leave a like to let me know, and if you want to see more like this, consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye!